Hey everyone, Grayson the Bard here, and to kind of break up the dead space between my next big scripted video essay video, I am going to be doing some shorter, more stream of conscious, rambly content, kind of like my roster rundown series, where I'm going to be talking about different games I've been playing, or different things about Monster Hunter in particular that have kind of come up in my friend groups or in just like thoughts I've been having while playing the game and recording footage and all that stuff. These are going to be a lot less structured than my video essays and more of opening the door up for discussion with the Monster Hunter community. And as such, today I want to talk about probably my least favorite aspect of Monster Hunter Wilds, which is, as you could tell from the title, Artian Weapons. Now, first things first, I'm going to come right out and say that I don't think Artian Weapons are all bad. I actually like a lot about them. I think they are a really good idea in concept. I just think the execution takes a lot away from, for me, what makes Monster Hunter feel like Monster Hunter. And if you know me and know the channel, you know that I don't like being negative for the sake of negativity. If I'm going to be negative, I want to talk about like what I think could be done better, and also what I like about it. So that's what I want to start with, is what I like about Artian Weapons. I feel like as a concept, they are a really good way to get people to play different like play styles of weapons. I think it's really cool being able to come up with an idea for a weapon you want and just build it from the ground up. As somebody who absolutely loves status weapons, paralysis specifically, it always seems like game by game, there are never many good paralysis options. I'm thinking back to Monster Hunter Rise, and I'm pretty sure there were two paralysis weapons, one from Volvidon and one from Vespoid, and neither of them were particularly good on any of the weapons whatsoever. You like really had to sacrifice being able to play well and play efficiently with using the status that you wanted to use. This is definitely less of a problem in Monster Hunter Wilds for paralysis specifically, just because of how overtuned paralysis was when the game launched. And I think with the recent like 0.5 title update that they did, I think they got rid of a lot of that overtuning. I think I saw that they adjusted like the thresholds for monsters that are supposed to be resistant to paralysis, because it really didn't matter. You could just swing in with anything paralysis and absolutely body most monsters. And I loved that. I loved being able to roll up with a Lalabarina Lance and just keep the monster stationary. It felt so good, and it was like, yes, finally paralysis is having its day. But anyway, that again, talking about how these videos are going to be a little less structured. Going back to Artian Weapons, being able to be like, oh, hey, there's no good, paralysis hammers that I want to build, or I don't like the look of the weird cage hammer that they have, I'm going to build my own. I think that's awesome. And the fact that it is very easy for you to get pretty much any part you want for any weapon you want to build is really nice. I have been playing for about 200 hours, I think, at this point, which I know sounds like rookie numbers to some people, but for me, that's, I've got a day job. I got to pay the bills. I can't do this full time yet. But in that time, it is very rare that I need to seek out a specific weapon part. Just farming, monsters regularly for upgrade materials or for different decorations, you get plenty of Artian parts to the point where I could probably log in right now and say I wanted to make a water longsword for some reason. I could probably go in and do it with no problem whatsoever. I think giving players that abundance of resources to make the weapons is a really good idea, and I think it makes sense that they then kind of bottleneck you at the Artian upgrade materials, where the real grind for Artian weapons and the real sticking point for some people comes from getting the materials to reinforce it, because those are a lot more rare, those are a lot harder to come by. But I am personally glad that they chose that direction to take it instead of the alternative. I would much rather have the upgrade materials be harder to find and the crafting materials be insanely easy to get than the reverse of that, But now, getting into what I don't like. I think, first and foremost, they are ugly as hell. They look like, universally, I do not like the designs of any Artian weapon. Well, okay, I really like the Artian hammer. It reminds me a lot of the rocket-powered greatsword from Monster Hunter World. The effect on the fully upgraded Artian hammer, where it has the rocket boosters on the back. That's tight. I'm fine with that. That's cool. We'll keep that. I like it. And the sword and shield having the magnetic shield that is not fully attached to the player's arm, but moves around and wobbles a little bit. That's a really cool look. Sword and Shield gets some really fun designs, like the Jin Dahad Sword and Shield being a cleric flail. That gets me every time. I really want to build around that weapon at some point. But other than that, I really don't like that generically sci-fi metallic with some glowing bits aesthetic. I think it's kind of boring. I think they're pretty flat. I would have liked if different elements had different designs to them, if every Artian hunting horn didn't look like a waffle maker, if water hunting horns had a kind of seashell aesthetic but a metallic sci-fi seashell, I think that would be dope. Or lightning hunting horns kind of looked like a more high-tech version of the Ray Dow hunting horn with the drums, or a big guitar amplifier or something like that. They could take that sci-fi angle, and they could have done a lot more with that to make each weapon feel more unique. And right now, I just think they mostly look boring. But my biggest issue with Artian Weapons is how much they invalidate a core aspect of the Monster Hunter gameplay loop, in that for a lot of weapons, Artian is best in slot. If you want the best clear times, if you want the best, most optimized armor set you can, which, if you look at a good chunk of content creators who are putting out guides, or even just, websites putting out guides for Monster Hunter, it's always Artian. It's always getting the most attack out of everything. So people see that and they immediately think, oh, okay, this is the best thing to make. This is what I'm going to spend my time on. And you completely ignore every other weapon in the game. And yes, Artian weapons are better than a lot of weapons in the game, but again, visually and design-wise, they're less exciting. They have better slots, they have better damage potential, they have better crit potential. But no Artian heavy bowgun has sparked as much joy as the objectively bad Ufduna heavy bowgun that looks like a ship's cannon mixed with a Maori-style wooden sculpture of a bird. It's great. It's such a good design and a good idea, and trying to build an armor set when you see one of those weapons, for me, playing Monster Hunter, and for a lot of people who I have played Monster Hunter with, one of the biggest joys that I get is going to the smithy, looking at all of the potential options for a weapon, seeing one that just speaks to me design-wise, or maybe it has, especially in Wilds, maybe it has a skill on it that I think would be fun to try and build around. The Nursilla Greatsword is not a greatsword I would have run in any other game, but with how power clashes work and how tanking works in Monster Hunter Wilds, you can I saw that greatsword and I immediately went, oh, I see a fun set I could build around this, around prioritizing sleep to do big damage, but then really focusing on trying to get those power clashes and those perfect guards. It would be a lot of fun. You don't get that with Artian weapons. I have never looked at an Artian weapon and thought to myself, yes, I know exactly what I would want to do to make this work. Because you don't need to. It works out the gate. It works out the box. All you need to do is put as much damage as you can, and bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go and hunt monsters in less than 5 minutes. And not even just talking about the design, aspect of the weapons and how Artian weapons kind of invalidate being interested in building something new, it also invalidates a lot of the roster. They just improved this a little bit with the introduction of more 8-star tempered monsters through the other Apexes, but prior to the most recent update, the most efficient way to grind those parts, and I say most efficient because you could get them from other monsters, and that's usually how I did it, but to get the most bang for your time played, you had to be hunting 8-star tempered Arkvelds, and 8-star tempered Arkveld and a very weak monster usually was the play. If you could find an 8-star Arkveld and a regular Chotacabra, you were in business. And that kind of that made it so that there was no real reason to... Whoa, bird just flew into my window. Wham! Okay, alright. I might keep that in. Where was I? Right, Arkfeld, and how that was it. I'm glad that they're moving in the direction of improving that aspect of the Artian grind, and I am hopeful that we see that continue to improve as the title update cycle continues. I assume Lagiacrus is going to come out the gate as a 8-star monster, which adds more variety to it, and that's dope. But I think at launch and going up until this point, it was just a lot of, like, I would see a lot of people online complaining about hunting the exact same monster every time, and I was like, in my head, I was sitting there thinking, well, just go hunt other monsters. You don't have to do the most efficient thing. You don't have to, like, you don't have to chase perfection. You can chase enjoyment. That's fine. No one's gonna be mad at you. But you know, the Artian system and the way that it's laid out and how good those weapons are incentivizes the player to do that over any other content in the game, which I think is a big disappointment. And it's part of the reason why I have not engaged with the system as much as I think a lot of people have, just because to me it doesn't spark joy. It does not bring me enjoyment to play and make Artian weapons as much as other types of weapons in the game, you know? Would a hunting horn Artian weapon build probably be objectively better than running the Rathian and Zoshia hunting horn? Maybe. I don't know. But is it as fun as swapping between those and becoming an unstoppable wall of musical destruction? Absolutely not. My god, I've already been recording for 14 minutes. Okay, I was planning on these videos being a little bit shorter than my normal content, but I think we're going to be still right about the same size, so hell yeah. But I want to talk about, before I sign out, I want to talk about what I think they could do differently and what I think they could do better. And I think the big thing is I would love to see both Artian pieces and like upgrade materials be less tied to just a general RNG role and more tied to specific monsters. And I'm going to connect it back to, you know, y'all know I love Monster Hunter Rise. I'm going to connect it back to the Curios crafting weapon system in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, because I think if you took that system and almost one-for-one transplanted it into Wilds with the Artian parts, I think it would have been a much more engaging, much more fun system, and it would have incentivized people to engage with more of the content. So, for those of you who are not aware, the Curios crafting system in Monster Hunter Rise featured the anomaly parts from, you know, Curio anomaly monsters, and I'm not going to get into those. They come with their own problems and enjoyments and all that. I did a video on anomaly quests like a couple years ago, so if you want to seek that out. For my opinions on those. But one thing I really liked was how each monster had its own specific part that it could drop that you would need to use to upgrade your weapons, to augment them, to give them more power. Or, you know, like, one of the things you could do with Gunlance, for example, is there was a Curios upgrade to give that Gunlance a higher shelling level. Or you could increase a weapon's sharpness, or its attack, or defense, or its elemental ability. A lot of the things that when you roll to upgrade a Curios weapon, you get by pure RNG. It was more intentional in Monster Hunter Rise. You could seek out, all right, I need to get these monster parts, so I'm going to farm up this monster so I can do sharpness upgrades on my weapon. Or I'm going to farm this monster so I can get affinity upgrades. And I personally think if that was the direction they would have went with the Artian weapons, like, you know, you need a fire disc, then you have to hunt a Rathalos. But if you need a fire tube, then you fight a Gravios. Something like that to make it more intentional which monsters you fight, rather than I am going to seek out the monster that drops the most parts, which is going to be this one specific monster, and I'm just going to grind that to oblivion and ignore the rest of the roster. I feel like that alone would have solved the issue of, you know, just like invalidating the monster roster of Wilds, because, I mean, the Wilds roster is great, and it sucks that at the end game you're fighting one thing, or, you know, like just a couple things now. And then what I think they could have done differently in terms of visuals is it would have been nice if instead of Artian weapons being their own thing, I would have liked if when you get to the max upgrade of a specific monster weapon, you can start applying Artian upgrades to it. You can, take your Ufduna heavy bowgun and you can apply some affinity up, augments to it in order to counteract the inherent negative of its negative affinity. And then in that, visually, it would be nice to see those changes, like, kind of warp the weapon into being more sci-fi, like, to keep that, like, ship's cannon look, but, add some wires and some metallic plating and stuff like that to look like you are reinforcing these weapons that you have crafted, that you have hunted monsters for, with this like ancient sci-fi technology. I think that would have been a really cool design choice and a really cool look, rather than the just flat sci-fi aesthetic on the weapons. Now, do I think that any of that is going to happen? Absolutely not. I think the system is in place. If they are going to keep the system around for the expansion to Monster Hunter Wilds, which they might not do. Like in Monster Hunter Rise, we had the Rampage weapons that were completely discarded once Sunbreak came out. So it's entirely possible once. All right, so we've had Iceborne, Sunbreak. Once Wavebreaker comes out for Monster Hunter Wilds, and we get underwater combat and all that, and we get an entirely new crafting system, this video is going to be completely invalid. But if they do keep Artian weapons around, they're going to keep the system the same. They're not going to make any big dramatic changes to it. But I think it would be cool to see them lean more into augmenting the weapons you have, rather than creating an entirely new set of, like, objectively better relics. There's still a way that they could incorporate an end game, like, loop, grind, keep the people playing element to it. I don't know. What do y'all think? This video is already getting a lot longer than I was expecting it to be, so I'm going to wrap up here. I'm going to open the door to discussion, though. What do y'all think about Artian weapons? Do you agree with my takes about, like, what I like about them and what I dislike about them? What would you like to see different about Artian weapons? Or, do you think they're perfect and think I'm an idiot? Let me know in the comments. I love to read them. But yeah, that's where I'm going to be wrapping up today. Thank you all so much for watching. It has been absolutely wild to see the growth that the channel has gone through since my last big video. Definitely no pressure to follow that up at all. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Don't if you don't. And until next time, I will see y'all next time.